So if you've been looking for a pure DPS build, well, I think I have the build for you. A lot of you guys have been looking for a striker build that is less tanky and a lot more damage. Well, this is that build for you. And the crazy thing about this is I felt like I had so much damage that I was still able to add 2 blue cores to this build. So I am sitting at about 1.1 million armor versus having no armor at all on the build. Because of my expertise on my weapon, I can sacrifice not running those extra 2 red cores. This one works amazing. And what I love about it is the backpack. You can actually swap out the talent I'm using. Might not be the one you want to use, but there's one you can simply swap out for it, so it'll work fine. And for the chest piece, you guys can run a few pieces. Really depends on what you're looking for in a build. Now, what's great about this can work with the modifiers or no modifiers. It's really up to you. And if you decide to run the modifier retribution, well, you could even sacrifice more crit chance on the build because more than likely you'll have that 60% cap because of the way retribution works. So again, we'll talk about all that. We'll talk about the modifiers I use. I typically this season always play with modifiers, have no issues with them. So most of the builds that I do post, if you guys are struggling with running any type of modifiers, I mean, you should be able to do just fine with the builds that I show you on this channel because this is the season of modifiers. And when you pair the right modifiers with your builds, you just become so much stronger. And I know some people don't like the enemies modifiers that they have, but they've actually nerfed them a lot. So I think a lot of you guys might want to give it another shot because a lot of the modifiers that were annoying to fight really got a nerf. The shock bullets got taken away, so you just get disoriented. And then also the reflective damage takes longer to stack up and it's actually less on you. So to me, I feel that modifiers are a great way to make you stronger and feel less strong in the game now, especially with the changes to this update. But I think it's time. Let's get into the build. I think I showed you guys enough gameplay. We're playing on heroic and we have 4 directives, plus we have the modifiers, and the build seems to work, right? And the great thing about DPS builds, they typically work in groups, and I'll explain the backpack talent you guys can switch to if you plan on running this with a 4-man squad, because maybe this backpack talent's a little bit harder to proc in a group, but that's up to you. Play with it, see what you guys want, but I'll explain it in the build. So we're gonna start off with the weapons first. We are using the Lexington Name LVOAC. This is the assault rifle version, not the rifle version, so it's fully automatic. It's sitting at 978 RPM because I am running a striker set. We have 111,000 total damage. 57 in the magazine because we are running a piece to improve the magazine size on this, and we have 31 optimum range and 75% headshot damage. We do have 27 expertise in this. I got 27 expertise yesterday, so I decided to make this one and put it all the way up there. Assault rifle, health damage, and damage targets out of cover is what comes on this. And then I go with killer because killing an enemy with a critical hit grants 70% critical hit damage for 10 seconds. I really like this with the way I have this build set up, and it's one of the better talents to use on the Lexington. Now we do have 5% crit chance on the scope. We have 20 rounds in the magazine. We have 10% critical hit damage on the long underbarrel, and we have 5% critical hit chance on the muzzle. Again, if you guys are going to use the modifiers, you could probably stack all critical hit damage on this and drop your critical hit chance below 50%. I'm above 50% on this build because I want to show you with it above it. But yes, with the modifiers, because there are a few there's one modifier that allows you to stack a lot of crit chance in that modifier, right, if you hit those shots, and I'll explain that in a few. Now I do have the Scorpio as my secondary. It's really up to you, but Lexington is the main go-to weapon on this build. So we are running a 4-piece striker, so we're getting 15% weapon handling. We get 15% rate of fire. You see that 978 rate of fire on the Lexington. And then weapon hits increase total weapon damage by 0.65%, stacking up to 100 times. 1 stack loss per second between 0 and 50, and 2 stack loss per 50 and 100. Now we have weapon damage on here, critical hit damage, and critical hit damage mod. This is typically what you'll probably see throughout the build. So for the chest piece, I went with the Zoo chest piece. You can definitely go with the Grupo Sombra chest piece here. You can even go with the Fenris chest piece. I went with this because we already have a ton of damage, plus the extra 15% magazine size. Even though it's 7 bullets or 8 bullets when I reload and have one in the chamber, to me, I think it makes a big difference. but some people want pure damage, so you can go the damage route. We have weapon damage, critical chance, and I do have a critical hit chance mod here. Again, I can put this to critical hit damage, especially if I'm running a certain modifier, which I'll show you in a second. Obliterate, critical hits increase total weapon damage by 1% for 10 seconds, stacks up to 20 times, so that could be additional 20% total weapon damage on your build. Our second piece of strikers, we have the holster, so we have weapon damage, critical hit damage. Our third piece of strikers is the knee pads, and we went with armor because we have so much damage on the build. I felt having maybe a little bit more armor gives you that little bit of survivability, so I did go with armor, and then we have critical hit damage. If you want to go all reds, by all means, do your thing. For the gloves, we have another armor roll. So I do have 2 armor rolls on this to put me at 1.1 million armor. And we have critical hit chance here. And then for the backpack, we went with the Cheska backpack. We have 8% critical hit chance, weapon damage, critical hit chance, and then a critical hit damage mod. You can see that it's not fully optimized, the chest and backpack. I still need to optimize it a little bit more. I can gain almost 2% extra critical hit damage on this, but again, it already does its thing. And the talent I went with is Unstoppable Force. You can swap this out with Vigilance. Unstoppable Force, killing an enemy increases total weapon damage by 5% for 15 seconds. Now this does stack up 5 times, so 25% extra total weapon damage. But again, it's 15 seconds, so it can last a very long time. With Vigilance, remember, you can take damage and then it won't be active, but it's always active if you have no damage, but there is a cooldown time. So it's really up to you. If your solo Unstoppable Force works really good, you can really get those kills and hold it, especially if you're doing like missions, control points, and so on. 15 seconds is a pretty long time to keep that bad boy active. But yeah, Unstoppable Force, Vigilance, that is really up to you. So we get into our modifiers. You can see I am running all out. All out's one of my favorite, but the one I'm going to tell you guys about is this one right here, which is called Retribution. Now the way this works is shooting enemies increase with inside medium range builds up to 100 stacks. For every stack you gain 0.5% critical chance. So that means you can have up to 50% critical hit chance if you're at max stacks. So that's why if you use Retribution and you lock it in with all out, like say you lock in the long distance or the short distance, you can keep this up pretty high once you know the stack is there. That's why you can actually afford to drop your crit chance to maybe 40%, because more than likely you're going to have 100%. I do have over 50% on this build without any stacks, so I'll show you that in a second, but yeah, that's how it kind of works there. I do love running By the Teeth, and I do love running Liability. Both of these work really good, and I feel work great with the global modifiers, and these are kind of my 3 with my running gun builds. Let's take a look at the stats. So if we go over here, you'll see I'm sitting at 52% crit chance without Retribution active. So that's amazing, right? 135% critical damage. So what I could do is drop this down to maybe 40%, and then I could raise up the critical hit damage, which, you know, that's gonna make a difference. Really up to you. Play with it, see how you like it. If you don't like running modifiers, this is how you run it. If you like running modifiers, typically I will drop this to maybe 45%. 40%, because I'm gonna have that pretty much at 60% because what I'll do is I'll build that stack with Retribution. Once I know I'm around mid a little bit more and I have additional critical chance, I know I'm at max stack, then I can just put out crazy damage. And remember, this is without killer too, so a lot of critical hit damage on this build. We have 21% health damage and 10% damage strikes out of cover. And we do have some armor on kill on here, 110,000, and that's because we are running the gunner class. So if you look here, we are running the gunner class, and the gunner class gives you 10% armor on kill. So that helps you out a little bit, especially with 1.1 million armor. You know, if you chain a couple kills together, you could get out of those areas where you may be struggling. But again, this is the build. You remember, you can switch these however you want. For the chest, I do like Obliterate, and then for the backpack, I do like Unstoppable Force or Vigilance. Really up to you. It's just a lot of damage you guys got on this build, and then you pair that up with Killer, and it's a lot of crit and crit chance. So again, if you guys have any questions, this is kind of a pure DPS build you guys can run. Now, if you guys are running in a team, you could have people run something like this. You could put Fenris here, you could put Grupo, but you would probably want to still have one person run the striker bag, and then probably run like the Coyote's mask with the chest. So ideally, you could do that too, right? Because the Coyote mask works great in group play. And you remember, if you have that set up, you're giving other people on your team crit chance, crit damage, you know. So really up to you, but a great way for you guys. If you guys are running that in team, you could probably still run that one. But this one right here is an amazing build, having fun with it. Ton of damage, as you guys see, and it works great with the modifiers too. So, all right, guys, what I'll do here is I'm gonna wrap this one up. Appreciate the support, appreciate the love. I'll see you in the next one. Hey, NothingButSkillz out.